All right, yeah. So I'm a second year student at Pratt in the MR program. I graduated U of T in 2020, and I did the design stream, so I also didn't do thesis. And I remember, I think, I don't know, like the application process for me was very constrained. Um, because I did an exchange year. So I actually had to double load my final semester. So I was doing two studios at once, um, on top of applying to grad programs, on top of COVID, turning everything online. So it was definitely, it's kind of funny to look back on this portfolio and be like, the kind of weird craze I was in putting it together. But I do think I was developing some ideas of, what I was aiming for in terms of a personal style, kind of the methods and media that I was interested in, and also the kind of variety of experiences that I had gained in my undergrad experience. And I think U of T was a really great experience for being able to provide multiple, methods of seeing the industry, whether it be from like a really conceptual standpoint or research standpoint, or like experimental stuff as well. I think graduating, I was a little disillusioned with how conceptual the undergrad studios were, and was really hoping to find something like smaller scale, and more fabrication oriented almost. So I was looking at, and I got really close with Reza Nick during that final semester. And he kind of led me to apply to Dalhousie. So I did a year of pre-master's beds program, which is like this weird 1 year environmental design, like secondary degree that you do to, because it's not a BArch program, you do to qualify for the MArch at Dalhousie. So I did that for a year, but that was also during COVID, and they weren't, super great at adapting in those kind of new methods of having to teach. So applying to Pratt was actually kind of a crazy, like, manic, like last minute thing where I was like, let me just see and apply to some US universities and just like see what my other options are. So I only applied to Columbia and Pratt, but Pratt generally was more affordable. And I felt like they, for me, really offered a lot of like hands-on fabrication, really model making oriented stuff, and also still very design oriented. So now I'm there, I'm working in the fabrication labs, I'm working in robotics, I'm working in CNC, I'm working in the metal shops. And I think that's always a really good experience if you're intending on applying to US schools. Being an international student, that's one kind of casual job you can have to have like a bit of extra income for like model supplies or whatever it is, because that will still work within your student visa, like, limitations for working. So yeah, that's just like some context, I guess. If you are interested in, really graphically driven and like fabrication driven stuff, Pratt's a great option as well. And it's obviously in the center of Brooklyn. And like, I was drawn to it for the kind of lifestyle as well, and the small scale studio within kind of a very rich urban environment. And that was something that I think Dalhousie didn't offer, which is why I ended up switching. So there's some projects from all of these experiences in there. I was working in my undergrad as well. So there's definitely less like mandatory studio work from Daniels, and more variety of where these projects are coming from. can I just, oh yeah, okay. So this is just, I think, a formatting thing. Usually with applications, you're probably doing your resume as a separate application, or down import. So I would say always keep that separate, but have it in the same InDesign document, so everything is like, coordinated and the layout works together, and it just feels cohesive. This like graphic thing, in retrospect, I really don't love. It was something I was trying, and it was like, I was trying to get at this like idea of being interested in really like collagey, like multimedia driven work. So I think if you can find a graphic that through trial and error, like kind of can tell the story of your own personal style, and maybe even the story of the projects themselves, as other people were saying, you can do that through graphics, but I would say like more times than not, it can really turn out to be gimmicky, which in retrospect, I think this is. So I would avoid gimmicky graphics. This is a student housing project from third year, I guess. It was like a kind of plug and play, affordable housing system with like a trellis facade. And yeah, only adding like text where, it's really necessary to kind of like explain what's happening in the drawing, or like explain what you couldn't in the overview and in the like cover page. I'd also say like try to keep your cover page scheme and like first spread really consistent throughout. And so I was kind of trying this idea of like, giving the reader context right off the bat of like, this is where it's located. This is like a kind of simple, map of the project. And then these are like the main images that explain it. And then kind of really, diving into the meat of the project. This is obviously like a more technical page. I think, this also in retrospect could probably use a bit more white space. But I think showing your most detailed work as large scale as possible, so they can really start to like see how much effort was put into like getting at every level of scale in a project, is always going to be helpful for you. This section is weird and I hate it, but always like, section perspectives are great to do for a full spread. I think, again, like finding ways to really add detail in like unexpected areas, or like try to resolve things that you maybe couldn't have modeled in Rhino that you can resolve through drawing, is always a good way to like go back to a project that you might not have touched in a while, and just like play around with how it can develop a bit more. This was like a built like little lookout thing for a summer studio. And yeah, I think it's always good to show any built work at whatever scale it is. And I think 1-to-1 scale, if you have anything like that, is always going to be really impressive for the people, receiving your portfolio. So I was just trying to like show, the main scheme, the kind of main concept behind the project. So, instead of having to read all of this, they could probably just look at this and get the gist of what's going on. And then this is obviously way more photography driven in the end, because it was just a built project. But again, just like kind of explaining the method of developing this frame. And then this is like a weird experimental project with Resonic. It was a kind of group urban study on Parkdale. So yeah, just trying to like really show off like the different levels of media that were built up through research of the area. I think this course, I don't know if it's the same or if it's still running, but it's a really interesting assignment that makes you like do a video, which I think if you have the ability to show, you know, multimedia or like alternative media, then definitely take advantage of that. But obviously some of the restrictions are pretty tight for portfolio submissions. And yeah, this is just very like illustrative, kind of like, you know, collage research of the site and kind of back points of transition in Parkdale. And then this is like kind of the final drawing proposing, I guess, like a track system that can that has like adaptive nodes for creating sites of gathering, little pop-up stores, you know, and kind of reclaiming a really kind of derelict, like old parking lot that's fenced off. This is a precedent study. I think including precedent studies are like, I would say generally like frowned upon actually, but this study was like, I think really formative for me, and in developing my like language of drawing. And I think there was some really strong images that came out of it. So if you can keep it short and you can really like explain a project in like 2 spreads, whether it's a precedent study or not, they're not going to be worrying about that at that point. Like if it's just a good project where it's just like represented well and they can kind of tell what's going on, then, you know, then it's a successful study. So you should show it. So these were just like, you know, diagrammatic plans kind of showing how I'm cutting into the space. And then some model photographs, which for this portfolio to Pratt in particular, it was really like model oriented, obviously because it's a very model oriented school. So any details that could show, you know, fabrication, or just like a level of experimentation physically, I think they really appreciate. And then this is just a little interior render. This is a project that I did at the Dalhousie program. It's like a secular community center in Spain. And this is all about just kind of like recreating the same typology. And I had this super postmodern prof, so he was like going crazy, like symbolic formalism mode. So it was like, you know, some fun experimentation. Whoa, I'm like having a brain fart. But like experiential, drawings about like, you know, how you flow through the space. How is it getting, you know, divided up, and then like some street sections for context. I don't like this spread. I think I would have, if I go back, I probably would have not put these 2 together just because they're so like jarring in terms of the 2 things they're trying to communicate at the same time. So I think if you can find a way like to really make each spread like super cohesive, and really like it's really obvious what it's trying to communicate to you right off the bat. That's also goes down to like the content of each drawing, and how they relate to each other. And I think this one, I was trying something, maybe it didn't work so well. And then this was also just like, you know, trying to show a bunch of, you know, collage kind of perspectival shots. These technical drawings, I'm not sure if I would include these in the end, but I think they kind of give insight into just like the nature of the lot that we were given, and how long and linear it is, and how I was working with that as a constraint into this like processional thing. And then detail work, just because I think it's good to show any kind of variety of scale of things that you can really work out. And yeah, I think that's always going to be a plus if you can really get into the details with a project, or at least with one. This is some professional experience. This is like a mid-rise in Halifax. And these drawings were specifically done for a competition. And it was a competition for urban housing and urban public spaces. And so this section was really like what it was all about, was this kind of procession, this like big light filled lobby that you can cross right through into the park. And so I think like, yeah, really going in on a drawing and like trying to figure out exactly what's the message that you're getting at with each drawing is always going to be a really strong quality to show off. This is an elevation. I don't think this is a great project to end with in retrospect. Also, I think if I were to go back, I would probably switch the order a bit. Because I don't think, I think I wanted to show a professional experience, but I think I was thinking about it as kind of a separate thing to my academic experience, when I think you should really think about it, about how it actually is starting to inform your academic experience. So ordering that maybe in relation, if you have any like professional experience in housing or whatever it is, like maybe put it near or adjacent to another studio housing project, so you can kind of show what you've learned and how you've applied it.